The laughter came easily to him that day, light, careless, and completely unaware of the weight those words would carry for the next 18 years. It was a golden afternoon, the kind where sunlight painted everything in warmth and possibility. He stood near the edge of the grand house, dressed in crisp clothes that reflected a life of comfort, while she stood barefoot a few steps away, clutching a half-melted popsicle in her tiny hand. Her dress was simple, slightly faded, but her eyes held a confidence that didn't belong to a child. "When I grow up, I'll be your wife," she said, her voice soft but certain, as if she had just stated an undeniable truth of the universe. For a second, he blinked in surprise, then laughed, bending slightly as if the idea amused him beyond measure. To him, she was just the maid's daughter, a sweet, innocent girl who didn't understand the world yet. "All right," he teased, ruffling her hair, "I'll be waiting." And just like that, he turned away, stepping back into his world of luxury, ambition, and endless opportunities, leaving her behind with nothing but a promise he would forget by evening. But she didn't forget. Not that day. Not ever. Years passed, and the distance between their worlds only grew wider. He became everything people expected him to be: successful, powerful, admired. His name began to echo in business circles, his face appeared in magazines, and his life turned into a symbol of wealth and achievement. Yet beneath all that success, there was an emptiness he couldn't quite explain, a quiet sense that something meaningful had slipped through his fingers long ago. Meanwhile, she grew up in a world that demanded resilience. Life wasn't kind, and it certainly wasn't easy. She watched her mother work tirelessly, sacrificing everything just to survive. There were nights when hunger whispered louder than hope, and days when dreams felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. But through it all, she held on to one thing: the memory of that afternoon, of that laugh, of that promise. Not because she needed him, but because it became a symbol of something bigger, a life she refused to believe was out of her reach. She studied harder than anyone else, worked longer than anyone expected, and fought battles no one ever saw. Every rejection became fuel, every obstacle a stepping stone. She transformed herself, not for him, but for the girl who once stood barefoot with a dream too big for her circumstances. And slowly, piece by piece, she built a life that no one could take away from her. 18 years later, the city buzzed with excitement over one of the most prestigious events of the year, a gathering of the elite, where power, wealth, and influence collided under dazzling lights. He stood at the center of it all, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, greeting guests with the same effortless charm that had made him so admired. Yet something about that night felt different, as if the air carried a quiet anticipation. Then she walked in. At first, no one noticed. But within seconds, conversation slowed, heads turned, and the room seemed to shift around her presence. She wasn't just beautiful, she was captivating. Her confidence wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. Every step she took carried purpose, every glance held power. She had become the kind of woman people couldn't ignore, the kind who didn't need validation because she had already proven her worth to herself. When his eyes finally met hers, time seemed to pause. There was something familiar in her gaze, something that stirred a memory buried deep within him. He couldn't place it at first, couldn't understand why his heart suddenly felt heavier, why his breath caught in a way it never had before. She walked closer, her expression calm yet filled with something he couldn't quite read. And then she spoke. "You said you'd be waiting." The words hit him like a storm, pulling him back to that afternoon he had long forgotten. The laughter, the promise, the little girl with the popsicle, it all came rushing back with a force that left him speechless. But she wasn't that little girl anymore. She was everything he had never expected, everything he had unknowingly underestimated. "I came back," she continued, her voice steady, "not because I needed you, but because I kept my promise." In that moment, he realized something that no amount of success had ever taught him, that life has a way of circling back, of reminding you of the moments you thought didn't matter. And standing in front of him was the proof that sometimes, the smallest promises carry the greatest consequences. The girl he once laughed at had returned, not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who had rewritten her destiny entirely. And now, the question wasn't whether she could be part of his world, it was whether he was worthy of being part of hers. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in the power of dreams, resilience, and destiny, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that inspire, move, and stay with you long after they end.